everyone. Welcome to yet another exciting webinar from ZenCircle, brought to you by Zensible. Today, we are diving into a topic that needs more attention: men's mental health. Are there any different approaches to men's mental health? What myths that we need to bust and what truths that we need to embrace? Let's figure it out together. And who better to guide us than the Knight of Steel himself, Arjun Gupta? Over the last 6 years, Arjun has been on a mission to make mental health accessible and relatable for everyone through his inspiring talks, videos, and articles. Arjun's insights come from his own lived experiences. He faced clinical depression and suicidal ideation as a teenager. Today, he is here to share his journey and expertise, making this session extra special. I'm Veda from Zensible, and I couldn't be more thrilled to have Arjun with us for this heartfelt discussion. Welcome, Arjun, and thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Veda. That was a great introduction. I don't think I could have done any better. So thank you so much for having me. And I look forward to this discussion on a very important topic, which is men's mental health.
Thank you, Arjun. I can only, talk and ask questions. You are the person who has the answers. So I'm glad the intro went well. By the way, Arjun doesn't just talk about psychology. He also teaches it. He hosts webinars and sessions on everything from correlation to chi-square and regression analysis. So check out his TalkMate page for more info. The link is there in the chat. If you can't see it, I'll post it again. And I also want to remind people to join ZenCircle community to keep in touch with other psychologists and to know about upcoming Zensible events. The link is again in the chat window, and please feel free to join at any time. And also a note to our amazing audience. This is your webinar too. So keep putting in your thoughts, comments, and questions in the chat. We will answer your questions starting from 6:30 p.m. And we'll make this a very interactive and engaging session. And we rely on you to make it really engaging. With that, let's dive straight in. So, Arjun, my first thing when I wanted to talk about mental health is thinking like whenever men always have this feeling that they want to fix everything themselves, even when driving. Partner says, "Oh, I know where we are going. You can switch off the Google Maps." Who drives without Google Maps these days, right? But that's not how he feels. He's like, "Yeah, I know. I can do it. I can fix it. I can take care of it." So for people like those, how can therapists encourage them to see therapy as a sign of strength and not as weakness, that they cannot solve everything on their own?
I think you make a very good point, especially with how common this is, because partners, friends, even me, I know that when I'm in a bookstore and I know which book I'm looking for, I will not ask anyone for help. I will go on that journey of discovery and bear the fruit of finding it if I do end up finding it. And I think self-reliance or independence is something that's very, very deeply ingrained in a lot of boys and a lot of men at a very young age, that you have to do everything by yourself. There's nobody who will do it for you. That you need to do it by yourself. You need to be independent enough to be able to do this. And that plays a role in how we develop in our future as well as adults, because we struggle to let go of that control, that we can ask somebody for help and save some time, and maybe just have things easier than they need to be. Things don't need to be that hard. And I feel the way therapy is often portrayed is very different from how therapy is. Therapy as a whole prospect is supposed to be empowering, right? That you claim your agency. That at least the humanistic school of thought says that therapy is all about helping each individual reclaim their agency in this world, reclaim their own personhood, their individuality, and then shape the world around them the way they want to. And therapy, unfortunately, is seen as something that's more about giving advice, giving solutions, and you go and you talk to the therapist, and the therapist then judges you and then gives you their solutions, and then you live with those solutions and you live a very healthy life, which is not how it is, which is not how it's supposed to be. So I feel if we stress on this aspect of therapy where we focus on the individual, we focus on the agency of the individual, we say that you will be the one in control. We will just help you reclaim that control where you it feels like that a control has been lost, where there has some helplessness that has come in, where you feel like you cannot do anything about a lot of things. Uh, that becomes very important. I was reading this research paper from 2020 where they went to rural areas in India and talked to the men, the women there. If you're struggling with something, what stops you from seeking help for it? What stops you from talking to somebody about it? And they say talking won't do anything, right? These things don't have a solution. So what will talking do? What will that do for us? And it's fair to think that talking to a therapist, talking to somebody won't really change your financial situation, won't really change the social situation you're in, the economic situation you're in. It won't change the world, but it can help you change your world. And I think that's very important distinction that we forget, that it might not change everything for everyone everywhere, but you're the most important person when you're in therapy, and it might bring some changes for you. And that's all that matters. So I feel if we stress on that more often as the therapeutic approach that we take, I feel like men would be a lot more comfortable in opening up eventually.
That is very interesting. And you started off by saying in the humanistic approach, it says that you are in control. You can still do this, and we are just here to facilitate. Does that mean that we cannot use CBT or DBT, that kind of things, when it comes to men's mental health? It has to be much more humanistic, you think?
I feel it depends on the clients that come in as well. I feel a lot of male clients are very happy to go with the standardized approach of the CBT and DBT, where there are some goals that you set and then you approach those goals, which again is which has a sense of masculine goal setting, goal achieving thing to it, right? That you set some goals and then you work towards those goals, and when you achieve those goals, you get some reward, something like that. So you definitely can use them. But if there is some resistance that is coming up, if the resistance is in the form of, I don't want to let go of the control of my life to the therapist, I don't want the therapist controlling my life, that's where I feel we need to just change a bit about how we portray therapy, how we think about therapy. That whether it's a CBT therapist, whether it's a DBT therapist, whether it's a humanist therapist, they won't control your life. They won't tell you what to do. They won't make the decisions. You'll still be able to make those decisions. We are not here to control your lives. We are here to help you uh, take better control of your life and lead a better life eventually.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That it has to do with the individual and see what they are resonating with and what they are engaging with. Since we are talking about therapy and therapeutic modalities, uh, does it make a difference whether the person, the therapist, is male or female? Do men who eventually take the step to come to therapy, will they feel that, oh, if this person is a female, she will not understand what I am going through? And will there be any kind of blocks in how they open up, depending on the other hand, when they're talking to a male therapist, they could also have this inhibition, like, okay, what will this person think about me as a man, right? So is there a difference in whether the therapist is male or female, and how do you break down those barriers that may be there?
I think that's a very good question, and the evidence on it is very mixed. So, a lot of male clients are actually a lot more comfortable with male therapists as well. But at the same time, the counter evidence exists as well. A lot of male clients, because they are more comfortable in talking to women, they're more comfortable in.
Sorry, Arjun, just give me a minute. I'm going to ask everybody to mute themselves. People who are here, please mute yourself. We can hear background noise. There is quite a few participants, and if you are unmuting, it might disrupt the webinar. We want to make sure that the time is well spent. Sorry, Arjun, go back again. Thank you.
Sure. So, no worries about that. So, I think a lot of men also have only experienced comfort of their emotions with women in their lives, whether they were their mothers, sisters, or female friends or romantic partners. So they feel a lot more comfortable in opening up to female therapists because that's the model that has been set in their past lives, that you can only express yourself in front of women. There is some hesitance that comes up when it comes to opening up to a male therapist, that this person might think of me as less of a man, or they might be judging me, they might secretly be ridiculing me, which is important therapeutic work in itself. Like if the person is feeling that way about themselves, that a male therapist will judge them, ideally a client should be comfortable enough in sharing that stuff with the therapist and then build from there. But again, ideal conditions come up very rarely in therapy. So yes, some male clients prefer male therapists because they're more comfortable there. They're more comfortable in talking about things like sexual attraction, physical attraction, intimacy, romance with another man. But there are also loads of guys who are a lot more comfortable in talking to women about it. Uh, Again, the topics might be a bit different, but I've genuinely experienced both the kinds of people.
Mm. One thing that you said really resonated with me. You said that people, especially men, they see women as taking care of them, the nurturing them, and no matter how much we talk about it, there is still that concept of men are powerful. They show their power or their emotions only through anger or frustration, or maybe even violence in some certain situation, but that is just a way for them to show and have an emotional outlet. There are other ways of emotional outlet as well, like being sad, crying, expressing that they are not okay to others. So for men who are still in that zone, and there is nothing wrong with it will take time for that to go away, who are still in that zone, what can we do to encourage them and say it's okay to express other emotions other than anger and frustration, right? How do you do that?
I think it's not as easy as simply telling them that they can do this stuff, because genuinely this stuff gets shamed out of a lot of boys, beaten out of a lot of boys when they're very young. And it's still happening today as well. So I remember a few months back when I was in my society itself, a boy was crying on the seventh floor, and he was crying very, very, very loudly. Like I think he got hurt while playing. And he was outside his home, and he couldn't reach the doorbell apparently. So his mother just came running out. Why are you crying? Her first sentence wasn't one of encouragement, of care, of love. It was, boys लड़के रोते नहीं है, strong बच्चे रोते नहीं है, strong लड़के रोते नहीं है, strong boys don't cry. And that was the first sentence that came out of her, right? That okay, you're crying, but come on, don't do it, stop doing that. So that gets trained over your lifetime, 20, 10, 15, 20 years, depending on how old you are. And it's very tough to let go of that. You can't really turn it off, that you have just lost all that socialization. What can happen is that we can build deep relationships with men. We can make them feel safe enough. We can make them feel we can be trustworthy enough for them, that they're able to express themselves completely and wholly when it comes to their emotions. And that's a whole different league of challenges, because it can be difficult. As you said, anger is what we default to very often, because that is the only emotion that is allowed for men to feel. Uh, it's much better to be an angry young man than angry young man than a lonely,
VP young man.
sassy, little boy,
Mm.
right? So giving that opportunity to men, that they can express themselves in words, in actions, in their other emotions that they do experience. Those emotions are experienced, but it's very difficult to find the right people to express them to. It's very difficult to find the right people who actually are interested in listening to you, or actually care for you. um, and the worst part is that a lot of people actually say that you can express yourself with us, but then they are not very good listeners. They're also not very good receivers of emotion. They're also not very good non-judgmental people, right? They're not very good at not judging people for their emotions. And that sets up very different challenges that if you experience it negatively once, it just reinforces years of socialization. Okay, they're lying to me when they're saying that I can open up. They will still judge me. So there is a lot of lack of trust. There is a lot of isolation that is experienced, and we need to build those bridges and build those relationships over time. There's no magic solution to this.
Yeah, that is true. I know I said I'll go to audience questions only at 6:30, but we have been asking people to post questions in our groups. And one of the question is relevant to what we are talking about, and I will ask that. For the others who are in the webinar, please post your questions. If you have not sent it to us already in the chat window, we will definitely answer those questions, pick that up and answer those questions. So the question that somebody has asked me was, we ask boys and men to express their emotions better, right? All range of emotions. But research suggests that boys, especially in schools, when they express emotions that are traditionally associated with girls, for example, crying or showing vulnerability, if they express that, their chances of getting bullied is 45% more than the regular chances of everybody gets bullied. So in those situations, how do we encourage the children to express all of their emotions, knowing that they could get bullied for this behavior, especially boys?
Look, that is one of the many reasons why I feel just let it out is a terrible advice to give to young boys. Because as much as we want boys to express themselves, we also know that the way society is today, the way their social surroundings are currently, they will be ridiculed, they will be bullied more often if they do end up following our advice. Uh, it is important that you let out your emotions to the right people. And I feel in teenage years, boys have a very harsh experience with emotions where they are bullied, where they are isolated, where they might even get beaten up for some doing the right things, because that's what adolescence is like, right? You're questioning what's right and wrong, you're taking risks, you're pushing boundaries, and not pushing boundaries, staying true to who you were in such situations can be very challenging. So it's unfortunate that we have to tell boys to be selective in who they express themselves to, but that needs to happen. We can't just keep saying let it out, be yourself, express your emotions, because we know that not everybody will, and those who don't will often end up bullying those that do, right? So either we completely restructure society, we completely change absolutely everything about how we interact with each other, how we think about gender, how we think about gender roles. We flip a switch and we change that, or we give better advice than saying just let it out, just talk it out.
That is correct. It needs to be targeted, and even parents need to know what they say to their children, especially when they are showing their emotion and where they are showing their emotion. That's right. One of the other things that you mentioned before was that men might feel, when we were talking about male and female therapists, right? Men might feel more comfortable talking about relationships or their intimacy issues with other male therapists, and they may be more comfortable talking about certain other things like their work issues or other things to a female therapist. So how do female therapists make male clients feel safe and understood, especially when it comes to these kind of issues, the intimacy issues, which they believe that, oh, she is a female therapist, she will not understand. How do, when they know that this is the underlying concern which is causing whatever they have come to therapy for, how do they make them open up? It's very sensitive and very delicate.
Definitely. I think you put it very well when you say that it's sensitive and delicate, especially from the point of view of the therapist as well. from the point of view of the female therapist as well, because unfortunately, a lot of female therapists do experience harassment from their male clients when it comes to topics like sex, when it comes to topics like physical intimacy. And it can be very challenging to bridge that very narrow gap between, just exploring your sex life, just exploring what sex means to you, what sexuality is for you, um, how do you express it, and making sure that the other person is still comfortable, that the other person does not end up in a position where they feel harassed, right? So, genuinely, my answer to that will be that I'm not sure if there is a clear solution to it, because living in India, we know how common sexual harassment can be. And it's very challenging to talk about these issues, especially as openly as we need to, with people of the opposite gender, because the other person will bring in their own experiences of such conversations, right? Yeah, you can be the best therapist in the world, but those experiences will come in when a male client brings up topics of sex,
Mm,
that uh, you will be a bit hesitant as well.
mm,
So that is a very huge challenge about how we, again, as a society, think about sex, think about
mm,
sexuality, and the experiences that are associated with sex. So I don't think the solution to this is in the therapy room itself. I think it's outside, and whether we can actually create safe spaces where therapists and the client can explore these things together with comfort, with the knowledge that the other person has no ill intentions, has nothing that will harm either of them. So it's not that easy, and I feel like that's a very huge challenge that we face.
Yeah, especially when it comes to, you spoke about sexual harassment, right, Arjun? Um, in India, and not just in India for that matter, everywhere, sexual harassment is usually associated with females being harassed, and very rarely, it's very infrequent that they associate that with boys and men, and it becomes very, very difficult for them to start talking about those kind of topics, right? There is also a question from the audience which may be very similar. They have asked, how can we ensure that we respond and receive men's emotions in a way that makes them feel comfortable and heard, along in the context of talking about just general emotions also, and specifically if there has been any harassment, how do we understand and open up? Is there any practical things that we can do? You said, we'll be able to create safe spaces. What sort of spaces? Is it like group conversation, individual conversation? How do we identify that?
Yeah, so I have this reel that I released on Men's Day about a very short 60-second masterclass from Modern Family, where one character is talking about something that's very emotionally charged for him, and the other character, a man, is creating a very safe space for him. Uh, and he is doing that by doing nothing at all, not giving any special attention, not interjecting, not asking any leading, probing questions, keeping things very calm from themselves, right? The conversation was mostly shoulder to shoulder. The comfort that was offered, he offered a very simple seat. Like one character was standing and the other was just wanted to let him sit. So he didn't say, have a seat, take a seat, sit down, it'll make you feel better. Just gave a seat. And he sat down, right? Did not say a word throughout the whole monologue, 60 seconds, 90 seconds, did not say anything, offered him whatever he needed to, did not interject at any moment, kept it shoulder to shoulder, did not try to calm him down or offer any support verbally when it was not needed. And these are things which can be difficult to do because we are not very used to silence. We are not used to silence. And if I went silent for 60 seconds by my watch, it would be uncomfortable for most people here. He's not saying anything, he's not doing anything. Come on, do something, right? But we need to be comfortable with that silence, that you don't need to do anything. Just let it be. Just let things be as they are. Um, If the other person says that they need something, okay, fine, maybe get them that. But overtly doing it with the sense of offering comfort or overt comfort, I think the other person will feel a bit exposed in those circumstances. Don't make them feel exposed. Uh, just let them be. That's very important, and at the same time, very difficult to do as well. That was for general emotions. For stuff like sexual harassment, um, I I'm afraid that a lot of men will never open up about it in their lives, ever, because number one, we live in a country where it's not illegal, so it does not come up, because the thing that they hear first time something bad happened, give a case, file a case, something will happen, you'll get some justice, right? Here we don't even consider it something that's wrong. We don't say that it's wrong, that you need some justice for it. It's life. There's nothing that can happen. And there's a lot of ridicule that is assumed that people will bring upon you, that how can you get harassed, how can you experience something like this, you're supposed to be a man, you're supposed to enjoy it, right? So again, the way we see these issues is very, very problematic. And the fact that we don't even see them as illegal is just mind-blowingly bad to me. I don't even know how that's possible. But if you are able to create a safe space, as we are talking about, in isolation, not doing something where you're building trust instead of offering comfort, it's more about just letting them be, just letting the trust linger, then maybe they'll open up and share things, and maybe it'll give them some sort of peace to being able to share that stuff. Otherwise, it'll just be a punchline for everybody else, and it won't get expressed.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, that is true. And the fact that it's not legally recognized in India, it's so, there is, especially in industries where employed people, there is so much conversation about prevention of sexual harassment, and every organization has to have this a posh committee after a certain level, but that whole thing is structured only around female centered, which is good. It is needed, it is definitely required, but at the same time I wish it can be expanded and become gender agnostic. Hopefully the more we talk about it, eventually we will reach there. So there is a question from the audience, which I will go to. The question says, so I have observed how women would try to make the safe space for a man to express, but their behaviors reverse pretty fast in the presence of other men. So, like, friends are talking together, a boy and a girl, and they are expressing okay, the boy is expressing well, but as soon as other men or other boys come over, where it feels as if they are more focused on impressing other men than talking about whatever they were talking about, or feeling what they were feeling. So what do you do in those situations?
You've diagnosed the problem correctly. They are trying to impress the other men. They are trying to prove that they are as manly as they are. And the other men are also trying to prove that they are as manly as the others are. And we are all collectively trying to prove to each other that we're manly. It's like a circus that's happening. We're all playing a role in there. Um, and I feel, unfortunately, a lot of male friendships come down to this form of um, performative emotions, where you're just feeling the right emotion. You're saying you're feeling the right emotion instead of actually feeling it. And there are very few male friendships which are amazingly deep, amazingly comfortable for everyone involved. But I feel that that's an exception instead of being the norm. And if you're a woman who's watching this happening in real time, it will be like, this is like I'm talking to two different people, and what is going on over here? And yeah, there's if it's up to that guy, right, that they actually stand up for themselves, for what they're feeling, for what they're thinking, for who they truly are, instead of just trying to adapt themselves in order to get the approval of the others. So there was this show, Mean Girls. I haven't watched much of it, but it's about getting the approval of the popular girls. If there was a Mean Boys, it would be like getting the approval of the popular boys, and it will be the story of one boy who's standing up to that and saying, "I don't need your approval. I'm enough as who I am." But that's a journey that not a lot of men are able to make.
Yeah, I think the other person, the female, should also understand that this change cannot happen overnight. It's good that they are able to open up to them when they are alone. And yes, it might be different when they are with other men, but they also have certain restrictions, and those barriers don't break overnight. And it takes time. Be patient, and let them go through that journey. Right, I'm going to take one more audience question before we move back to our list. This one says, to get validation of other men, basically, which you get, they need to feel, actually, this is just an extension of the previous question. I think we have covered that. Sorry, we covered both of those questions. I'm going to go to the next one. This is a very interesting one. The suicide rate of males is more, and it's not reducing anytime soon. Many don't come forward to share their experience, personal, mental issues, and so on, because of societal pressure is experienced by men. And they finally come to the conclusion that nobody cares. How do we set up platform that is equally encouraging men to step up and speak and get help? That is the question. I'm going to just sneak in one of my answers here before I let you answer. Noel, this webinar is one such platform. Arjun's, whole learning, teaching, everything is one such platform where we promote men to open up, provide them the safe space to talk about it. But I will also pose the question to Arjun so that he can talk more about other platforms and other ways in which we can help them.
I lost my train of thought, but I think what's most important is that we share stories that they can look forward to, that they can relate to, right? Stories, I feel stories are some of the most important things that we have, and stories that men can also, um, the more we portray men and the stories and the realities that they go through, the more others will be comfortable in speaking up about it. Um, because they'll get this reference that I don't want to express a lot, but look at this. This is what I feel, right? I remember there's this podcast called Be a Man Yaar by Nikhil Taneja. Okay, one time they had Vikas Divya Kirti on there, and we were all watching it, me, my mom, and my dad. Um, and midway through it, my dad says, "This guy looks a lot like me. Matlab, he thinks a lot the way I think, and I didn't know there were other people like me as well." And for him, that was a moment of expression, right? He managed to talk it out. He managed to express something that he could not have otherwise. He managed to relate himself to somebody as well, that there are other people like him as well, and that they get a platform as well, and that they also get to express themselves. They also are heard. They also are cared about, right? So I feel it's very, very true that a lot of men end up feeling that nobody cares about them. In such situations, we need to counter that notion by setting up stories, by sharing stories of people, men who are cared about, men who were cared about, men who managed to overcome difficult situations, um, just to ensure that there is hope, that it is not lost, that it is not over, that you can also um, recuperate from difficult circumstances. So I think that's the goal that we should go with. The more men we have talking about this stuff, especially talking about suicide rates, talking about emotional issues, the better it will be. Yes, it won't come down eventually, immediately post that, but at least it will be something to hold on to. And I feel that's why a lot of podcasters are very famous these days as well. There's Arpit Bala. I feel like he's very popular among young boys. There's gangster philosopher, something like that. I don't know what his name is, Shubh, I think. But like young boys are looking out for people who they can relate to. And these podcasters, these YouTubers are filling that gap for a lot of them. Are these YouTubers the right ones that they should be following, that they should be looking up to? That's another question. But I feel that's where the solutions are, that you set up somebody as somebody who people can talk to, people can interact with and relate to.
Yeah. So what you said makes a lot of sense. Are these the YouTubers they should follow? There are as many as good YouTubers who promote the good word. There are many YouTubers who also promote toxic masculinity, and they need to be aware of all of that. Um, Arjun, if you don't mind me asking, and if you feel comfortable talking about it, when you went through depression yourself, what made you open up?
Hmm. I feel for the longest time I was not opening, like for 18 months or so, I was not opening up at all. And my parents, my therapists, my doctors, they were all very frustrated. This guy is not doing anything. And I feel one day I think it was after my last suicide attempt, which was terrible, horrible attempt at dying. Matlab, so bad, horrible, that I felt कि ठीक है, I am not very good at dying at all. तो ये तो नहीं हो रहा मेरे से. I cannot do this. So let's give something else a try. And the next day, I wrote this very long Facebook post that I'm going through this thing. I'm told I'm depressed, but I don't believe them, and I need some help. So if I don't need you to tell me, I actually was very expressive in that post somehow. Like I told people what I needed, I told people what I didn't need, and I said that I am genuinely desperate for help at this moment. And I feel the response to that really changed how I felt about myself, because a lot of my teachers, a lot of my school juniors, seniors, a lot of people that I had lost touch with just came together and they were like, look, this is not who you are. We know this is not who you are, and you can beat this stuff. So we believe in you, and we are here for you. If you want to talk, just let us know. And I think that was very important for me, because it made me realize that I had started telling myself stories about myself which were not really true, that I had started believing things about myself which were not really true. And that's what made me open up. That when I saw that window of hope, right, when I saw that window of possibility that I can actually emerge from this, that's, I think, when I started opening up. And uh, what do you know, in 6 months I was a lot better. It's like that was what the magic cure is. So yes, I think that's opening up genuinely just completely changed the trajectory that was going in my life.
Yeah, I'm really thank you for sharing that. That story hopefully will inspire other people to do that. And I'm also thankful that you had such understanding friends and family around you who helped support you through that. So, relating to that, there is a question from the audience. They are asking, how can we better recognize the signs of mental distress in men who may not express their feelings openly? For example, I am a friend of a person, and I am your friend, Arjun. What do I look out for so that I know, okay, Arjun has some concerns. I need to step in. I need to help. How do we identify that?
Um, I think the toughest part will be to separate the actions from the person, from the man in such a situation, because a lot of times the signs of distress are very aggressive. They're very aggressive. They're very um, tending towards isolation, tending towards aggression, tending towards passive aggressiveness, which can be very difficult to identify because, first of all, if you tell the other person that this is not who you normally are, they might be even more aggressive in response to that. That who are you to tell me who I was, right? Uh, which can make things very difficult if a person is not willing to accept that there might be something wrong with them, if they're not willing to consider the possibility that they might be going through something. It's very difficult to make them recognize it, which is one of the most important things that I'm stressing on. I feel like most of the audience here are women. If the other person, if the guy is not willing to accept it, it's not your duty to change that. You cannot do anything in those circumstances. You can look out for signs, you can try and have an honest conversation, but if the other person is not receptive, that's your job done. You are done. Was point. Yeah, there's nothing that you need to do more than that. If the other person is withdrawing from their usual activities, if they're withdrawing from going out, meeting, things that they usually used to do, keep it that way. If they're withdrawing from their usual activities, if there are some changes in their behavior, if they're suddenly getting a lot more aggressive than they used to be, they're picking fights for no reason, um, that is a sign of distress, right? But at the same time, as I'm saying, this can also have an impact on you as a person. So you have to decide where that boundary is, that if they go beyond this boundary, I am not here to play along after that. So I feel that's one of the most important things. And thankfully, my friends back then, when I was going through this, they had these boundaries. Otherwise, if they had just stuck with me, I feel like I wouldn't have realized anything that uh, I was going through. I would have just been like, if something was truly bad, I would have already lost you. You would have already left, right? So yeah, keep your boundaries and stick with them. I think that's very important to do.
Yeah. So, again, related to what you're saying about boundaries, Arjun, there was a question outside of this that somebody had sent in the group, which was, we understand my friend is going through something, and I need to tell that person that you need therapy, you need to go to therapy, right? That is your boundary. You have helped them as much as you can. And now this is beyond me. I don't have the wherewithal to help you further. And now you're better off going to therapy. And if they have never gone to therapy before, how do you talk about that? Because it's still so taboo.
Hmm. Um, I feel that is one of the most difficult conversations you can have with one of your guy friends, because um, it's very difficult for a man to accept that he needs help. It's very difficult for a man to consider that he needs help, and it might be very emasculating for the guy to hear that you need to go to therapy, that you need to talk to a therapist. It might almost be an insult that you need to go to a therapist, right? Um, I think I think what we need to do instead is let them know that this is not how they used to be, that they let them know that there have been changes in their behavior which they're concerned about. Um, let them know that there is professional help there if they want to take it, if they decide to take it, if they want to pursue that option once or twice, it is there. But not say that it is the ultimate solution, that just go to therapy and you'll be fine, because that's not how therapy works, that's not how we work. We don't have any magic pills ourselves, right? They just come to us. A client has to be willing to cooperate with the stuff that we through the process of it, right? um, Bring it up sensitively, bring it up with respect to the other person, that they are their own person and they might make a decision that you might not like, but be respectful to that as well. I feel that's the best we can do, and beyond that, it's not in our control after that.
Okay. So you mentioned behavioral changes a few times there, Arjun, and there is a question from the audience. Again, I've dropped all the questions from the webinar. I'm just going with audience questions at this point of time. It's okay. That's what we are here for, answering their questions. But they have asked, and if I understand it correctly, that when we know the people, We know the behavioral changes because we know what they were doing before. But if we don't know the person, or are there any signs that we can keep an eye out for, whether you know the person or not, what changes they will exhibit, or they may exhibit when they have certain mental health concerns. And also, there's so much reluctance and denial. Sometimes it is frustrating as a psychologist, not the clients, but in general, and also as a caregiver, right? So, what do we do? Signs to look out for? How do we deal with our own frustrations when things are not going right?
I feel like my family would answer that best instead of me because I think even in my own experiences, they were the ones who were very receptive to those signals, to those signs when I was not going to college, when I was just withdrawing from playing even. I used to love playing football, but I stopped playing football as well. I used to love going to college and studying. I used to love studying. I stopped studying. And they were the ones who suggested, do you want to talk to a psychiatrist sometime? Okay. ठीक है, they took me to a psychiatrist, but I did not do anything there. I did not talk to them, so it wasn't really productive. And I feel the frustrations that come with it are genuinely best shared with people who are not the person you're caring for. I think with others, I think that's the best way. Because if you share your frustrations with the person themselves, it'll only add to the guilt that you feel like there's something wrong with me and I'm not able to change it, and it's only adding to the guilt in those situations. And I completely understand how frustrating that can be. Why are you in such denial to a possibility that there might be something wrong? um, I feel again we come back to the stories aspect, that it is normal to go through these things, that normal people also go through these things. A lot of boys have this perception that women go through these things only, or rich people go through these things, and I'm not either of those things, so I cannot go experience this. uh, which is where I feel if we had more prominent stories of young men experiencing and overcoming depression, experiencing and overcoming challenges in their life, I feel like it'll be a lot more easier for them to accept, because it's very very common. It's not a problem that it's not common. It's difficult to find such stories, but how do we get those stories to the people who need them? That is the challenge, I feel. And we need to overcome that in order to change these things.
Patience and keep on referring back to stories. That's the one. There are a couple of questions about group therapy. Somebody has asked, a lot of men believe they are alone with the problems they are having. Does group therapy maybe help them open up better? And there's another one who says, do you think group therapy would be better than individual therapy for men with stress, anxiety, depression? Also, if instead of traditional therapy, there is something like CBT skills training, would that have a higher uptake from men?
Hmm. Loads of questions. So first, for group therapy, I've observed that if the facilitator is a man, then they are a lot more comfortable, uh, especially if it is a man who has their own experiences that they are drawing from. So there, it's seen as more of practical and theoretical knowledge, that this expertise that this person is bringing in, instead of just being theoretical knowledge. Um, so group therapies work in that situation, in that very narrow scenario. They're very receptive. They're very open up. They open up very quickly in those scenarios, because the facilitator also knows the right questions to ask in such situations. So if I'm doing a group support group on men with depression, I will know the kind of experiences I should draw on. I'll be able to share anecdotes from my own life, which will be authentic as well, and it'll be easier to bring those up with the other people. CBT, I feel it can often be very superficial when it comes to uh, answering the problems that the men are facing. But if it is a very straightforward issue that they're facing, work-life balance, whether it's drawing boundaries, professional settings may, personal settings may, relationship issues, there I feel that CBT is very, very helpful. And there will be uptake from a lot of male clients for that. But again, the question will come in, will it lead to long-term change? Will it lead to change in the personhood of the person themselves, so that these are rooted out from the root itself? That is an issue. So I feel, yes, CBT, most men I feel are more comfortable with the CBT approach because it's so goal oriented, it's so straightforward. Um, but I feel it leaves out a large chunk of men who just want to be understood, just want to express themselves, just want to vent. And for them, we need different approaches.
Okay, that helps. Thank you. Uh, the next question is, this is a very interesting one. At times, it happens that when males do not do open up about their feelings to female therapists, they get emotional and attracted to them. Okay, so what could be done in a therapist and male client, female therapist and a male client? How do you set that boundary that you are opening up emotionally? That doesn't mean that you are actually attracted to me. How do you make them understand that?
There's this scene in The Sopranos where the main character actually confesses his love for his therapist. Okay. And the therapist very straightforwardly says that what you're experiencing is not love, what you're experiencing is comfort, safety, emotional safety. You're experiencing it for the first time in the 40 years of your life, and you feel that it is love. Uh, but it is not. And if I could share that scene here, it would be great. But I link to it, or you can view it on YouTube as well. Sopranos therapist confession love ऐसा कुछ keyword, ठीक है? And yes, it is very probable that your male client will develop affectionate feelings for you. Yes, it is very likely. And it is also important that you help them contextualize these feelings as being feelings of comfort that they've experienced for the first time in their life, probably, which may not necessarily be love. You can remind them of the ethics of it all as well, but I don't think the ethics will really convince them. But it's more about what they're experiencing is not necessarily love, but safety, comfort, belongingness, uh, a belongingness that they are experiencing with themselves. So, uh, in psychoanalysis, how we see transference is basically how the client feels about some parts of themselves, right? So it's not really the therapist that the client is feeling affectionate towards, it's themselves that they're feeling affectionate towards, and the client is the therapist is the object of this projection. The feelings are being projected onto the therapist, but they're actually directed towards the client themselves, that they're beginning to like themselves at a very core level. um, and they're not used to it, so they don't know what to do. So if you remind them of this stuff, I think they should be able to understand that this is what they're experiencing.
Yeah, Harshan, that is so great that you are actually starting to like yourself, and that's what you're projecting back to me. That's so good. Love it. Just a follow up on what you said. I will be sending an email to everybody who's attending the meeting. If you want to send me some of those clips, including the YouTube clip and the podcast that you spoke about earlier, I can send all of that together to everybody who's part of this webinar, right? Next question, and this is something, again, very close to my heart. I struggle with it a lot as well. While younger men are becoming more open about mental health, older generation, like our fathers, often keep their struggles to themselves. How can we create a supportive space that encourages them to open up and feel comfortable sharing their emotions, or to even get in touch with their emotions?
I feel if you approach it from the view of emotions, you will find a lot of resistance from them. If you approach it from a sense of purpose, you will make their lives a lot better. Because I feel older people after a point seem to lose that purpose in their life. Like I feel what are we doing now? Like what next? Because death is next, but it's very difficult to come to terms with that, right? Ki, yeah, your time is coming to an end. The world does not belong to you anymore. Um, it's the best parts of your life are done, right? Um, and if you then ask them to just verbalize all of this, it'll be like making a person see everything that they're going through, making a person process everything that they're experiencing, which can be very, very scary, right? So I feel if you approach it with the purpose of can you get some new purpose in your life, some new goal, some new objective that you have. I remember my Nanu, who's around 90, he decided he wants to write a book about himself. Like he wants to just write all his life experiences somewhere, right? And then he just got to typing. He learned typing. He's 90. He doesn't know. He hasn't worked with a computer ever. He learned typing. He spent a few months typing, developing his speed, and then he used to spend the whole day typing, tap. And a year later, his book was ready, and then he got it printed, and then he got it binded, and then he did a very small launch with the whole family that I wrote this book. Um, and that made him a lot happier than he was a year or so back, right? So, is our goal that we need to make people more emotional, more emotionally open, or do we want to make people a lot happier? I think that's a question to ask. Do we want to give people what they need in order to live emotionally healthy lives, or do we want them to open up to be emotionally healthy? I think both the ways are decent ways. There's no right or wrong here, but I feel there will be a lot more success with one than with the other,
Mm.
because the socialization that I'm talking about with young boys, that's like 10, 15 years. With older people, that's half a century. That's 50 years, that's 60 years, that's 70 years. And to ask them to just say कि ठीक है अब ये तो गया अब कुछ और करते हैं, that is bordering on the impossible, I feel.
Yeah, that is true. And it's not just that they feel as if why do I have to learn this new thing at this point of time? They are like, nah, it's okay. I've been okay for so long like this, and I will continue to be okay. So the different approaches in trying is very good. And book at 90-year Nano, oh my God, he is, inspiration for us all. I wish I could write a book when I was 90. I wish I could write a book right now, but that's a different issue. Anyways, could you please share your thoughts on the abuse, mental, sexual, physical, that men face within their family or married relationships? How can they be better supported or helped?
Acknowledging that this stuff happens in the first place would be the most important thing. I feel, again, we're talking about something which is not considered illegal in India. Domestic violence is legal against men. So I mean, don't use that the wrong way, but it's unfortunately not considered a crime again. And so acknowledging it in the first place that this is something that does happen, it's very, very prevalent. It's very, very common. And if you're experiencing something like that, uh, you are suffering. You are the victim of abuse, and I think that in itself would be such a huge relief for a lot of men out there to know that what they're experiencing is uh, actually disturbingly common, disturbingly something that a lot of men go through, and there can be a community that can be built for these men. I think that's the way to go about it. Um, in the long run, I feel again we're talking about structural changes in society, legal changes. We're talking about changes about how we see men in the first place. Because I'm pretty sure if a man opened up about his domestic abuse, even if it became illegal, and went to a police station and said, "Ki, my wife is beating me or my wife is emotionally blackmailing me," they'll be laughed out of there. So it's not just about making it illegal, it's also about changing how we see men, what we think of men, how we project the projection of a man that we have, changing all that stuff. That will take time, but changing the life of one man by offering him a community, offering him support, letting him know that this is common and he's not alone, that will go a long way for him at least.
And it has taken us so long to start talking about stories coming out about men's mental health in general. And I still have not seen men talking about their own abuse, right? Their physical, mental, sexual abuse yet. And I hope in the near future, men also start talking about it so that more people are aware. They know that this is okay to talk about, this happens, and destigmatize that. So, talking about destigmatizing, this is the last question that I have from the audience. If you were to have a look at the stigma present around men's mental health in society and verbalize it, this is a very interesting question. Take the stigma and verbalize it. How would you list it?
Hmm. Hmm. It starts from the individual. It starts from the individual, considering the things that they think about themselves, especially the boys, what they think about themselves, what they think about what it means to be a boy, what it means to be a boy with emotions, because these boys experience emotions. Everybody experiences emotions, but they also shame themselves for experiencing these emotions. They also judge themselves for experiencing these emotions. They also are very harsh towards themselves for experiencing these emotions. Yeah. Why are they harsh? Why are they shaming themselves? Because they have grown up with bullies who have either bullied them or bullied others for being emotional, for being expressive. They have grown up around parents who have done this stuff. They have grown up around cousins who have experienced this stuff. And then when they have grown up, they're now 20. Um, they are trying to be in a relationship. They are very lonely. They are seeking a romantic partner. And the romantic partner is now saying that I need somebody who's emotionally mature, somebody who's emotionally intelligent, emotionally expressive. And you see that the script is flipping. Like for the first 20 years of your life, you were told that you need not be emotional, you must not be emotional. And suddenly, emotionality is what's in, emotionality is what's desired. And so you're left in a state of confusion. Which is the right one? What do I do? Because either way, there are some concerns about what will happen to you. What are you as a are you a real man? Interestingly, both the groups will say that you're not a real man if you're emotionally intelligent and if you're not emotionally intelligent. The concern will be about the manhood. Um, and then we come to the very unrealistic pressures that come with being a man, the economic pressures, the social expectations that come with being a man. Um, and then a therapist like me comes in and says, when you're experiencing all this stuff in your 20s, 30s, whenever I come and say, your emotions matter, you matter. Okay. Uh, a person won't believe me, right? They'll be like, okay, we don't care about that. We have a lot of other fires in our life to put out. So, so the stigma of men's mental health is surprisingly very systematic. Conversations about men's mental health, men's suicide rates, the socioeconomic determinants of a man dying by suicide. Poor men are way, way, way more likely to die by suicide than poor women, rich men, rich women. Poor men are the most vulnerable when it comes to suicide, right? Uh, but conversations on that will be tough because those conversations will also bring in tough things like how is our economy structured, how is our society structured, how are our laws structured, how is our judiciary structured. um, but me as a therapist will come in and say ki mujhe batao, I know what you're experiencing, right? So stigma, when we're talking about stigma, it goes a lot deeper. It's not something that we can overcome together, right? It's something that we need to work on perpetually. I don't think there will be a situation where men's mental health will be completely destigmatized, because I do not believe we will live in an economy that's very different from the one we live in right now. I don't believe we will live in a society that is very different from the one we live in right now, unless something revolutionary happens. मतलब वो कुछ French Revolution, Russian Revolution type हो गया तो अलग बात. But unless that happens, this will continue. What we can do is maybe reduce a bit of it, maybe take a bite of it, if not the whole thing. And I think that's what our goal should be when we're doing this.
Every person who we can make them think a little bit or make a change, even one person, that is one person who is going in the proper direction. So we keep continuing to talk about it. There are multiple people in the audience who have said, let's keep talking about it. It's not going to be overnight. It's going to take time, but let's continue to talk about it. Let's continue to promote it. Arjun, we are 6 minutes over, and we have not gone through half of the questions that we thought we will tackle, but I'm so grateful that the audience have been so engaging. They have sent such good questions, and on the sites, which I have not been able to read it fully, the chat has been blowing up. They have been having, so much thoughts and conversations as a group. Collectively, they have been talking about it. So you have been brilliant, such insightful information that you have given us, practical information. Thank you so much, Arjun, for this webinar. We may have to get you back to go through the rest of the webinar questions. Thank you, audience, for being so engaging, so interactive. And a special thanks to Shreya from Zensible. She took out all the questions and sent it to me separately so that I don't have to read through all the chat messages. Thank you, Shreya. And until we meet in next webinar, keep talking about it, keep spreading the good news, and join our community. Look up Arjun on TopMate. Let's continue the conversation. Have a good evening, all. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Veda. Bye bye. Thank you so much for having me. I'll see you.